and identified the guy. But the other one he could not identify. He put it in writing, he sent it back to me in a letter. He said it was a hominid, which means it was a bipedal hominid.
So now we're talking about a creature that walks on 2 feet.
Correct. And it had, well, that's the word I got. And I don't know how he got that out of the hair, but that's what he said about the deputy too. Bipedal hominid, Hispanic male, recently trimmed mustache. And, facial. He said facial. So I don't know how he got all that, but he did.
Lección 185. Pata o pie. Quinta parte.
But the other one, he couldn't identify. I sent him a list of critters that wouldn't even remotely pass through here, all the way to a list of all of the critters that I could think of and researched on that would be in this area, that make this area their habitat. He couldn't identify it with anything on the list. So it was nothing on the list, including grizzly bears, Kodiaks, which don't wander around in this area this far south. Black bears, which are common in this area. It wasn't none of those things. Cattle, dog, anything. He couldn't identify it with anything on the list. I've tracked sightings probably 5 times since over the years.
Really?
Yeah.
In the same general area around here?
Yeah, until well, where it all kind of culminated, where it all kind of came to an end was shortly after Mount St. Helens blew.
Okay, that was 1981.
Yeah.
And after Mount St. Helens blew, and which blew ash all over a lot of places around here, why would that affect anything?
I got a theory on it. I'd say it's they were using the Shayless River drainage as a migratory route. They tend to travel. We had a sighting at night, right alongside the road.
You're saying they? You mean you think there was more?
Hay más criaturas.
Possible that. I need to say it like this. You just said a little bit ago, you can't prove that Bigfoot exists, but you have provided so much evidence that somebody else has to convince you it doesn't exist.
That's correct. I haven't necessarily provided so much evidence. I've seen enough for me to believe.
You've seen it.
That they're going to have to prove to me it doesn't exist.
Right, and you've collected the footprints, and you've got castings of those. But now you're saying
Tiene las huellas.
This is a species of creatures, possibly, that exists.
That's my theory. I said I had a theory.
Yeah. And so that after the volcano changed a lot of things around here, then those creatures would have changed their migration route?
¿De nos habla del volcán?
I think, actually no, I think that they're migratory before the volcano blew.
Ya no, not anymore. Ya no está Bigfoot?
You have a food source down there that is pretty much like we have around here. And then they're omnivorous, allegedly. So
what do you think they ate then?
Roots,
cosas,
rodents,
things,
rabbits, stuff like that. Anything they can get their hands on. They're kind of like our diet. If we were out here surviving on our own, we'd be eating critters, and we'd be eating roots and leaves and berries and that type of stuff.
Qué rico.
You were just showing us the different kinds of scat on the trail, the animal poop.
Hay caca de Bigfoot.
What about Bigfoot poop?
I got called to look at some pictures a guy got one time of some crap that he sent in and had analyzed, and they analyzed it, and he took me out back and showed me where the animal had visited. He got Bigfoot tracks out there. It was a sizable pile. He's claiming it's Bigfoot, Sasquatch crap. So, is it or not? I don't know. I'm not the expert. But what was in there were rodent hairs, berries, just what I said, roots, leaves, the green up on the ends of the dug furs, the high in protein and that. When it does come out, all of that was there in that scat that he had, and it was a very sizable
Fue muy grande.
pile.
So some people would say, well, yeah, the kids are just making up a story, or somebody's just trying to scare the kids.
Well, this guy was probably in his 50s then, and he had gone out to see what was disturbing the critters out in the barn, and that was what he was doing. When he went out there, he scared it off. And he said he saw a big shadow, huge shadow, running away from him across the pasture.
Estaba corriendo.
You've seen other things besides Bigfoot
Sure.
that people would have a hard time believing.
Sure.
Like what?
Bear, just what bears do. I was a stick away from a bear, a black bear that was very irate with me because I got between it and its cub. I used to always, in the old days, I used to always carry a tracking stick with me, and we had a little rule that we in the department when it was new, the department I currently work for, that we had to keep our guns, our weapons hidden from public view. And I was working a theft case out in the middle of the forest, and I had put my gun in my backpack, and I was monitoring the activity. A big old boar kept trying to cross an old abandoned road, and I was in the brush right next to a game trail, so I kept pinging rocks off of it and then running back over to the other side. But it was darn determined to cross that road, and the light was failing me, so I didn't want to be out there with this big old boar wandering 2 feet away from me.
Because it'd rip you up.
It had ripped me up pretty good. So I went ahead and moved on down about 40 yards, and came across another trail.
Hay otra senda.
Looked around, heard some people talking, I thought. Waited until they went by. They never went by, so I stood up. I didn't hear them anymore.
No escucha nada.
So I stood up, stepped out on the trail, started up the trail, heard a noise behind me, turned around, looked, and there was a little cub, and Mama was... I didn't get between her and the cub, but Mama was right behind it, and she cuffed the cub out of the road and came after me. And again, my gun's in my backpack. I would have wrapped around over its head or something to get it to turn around. But,
Well, see, if I told somebody these stories, they say you're just making it up.
Oh, no.
But if somebody like you, an investigator out in the wildland all the time, it doesn't sound so hard to believe because you're out there in the wilds. But I don't think anybody would believe me if I... In fact, my brother said he wasn't going to tell anybody when we saw the Black Panther, or Black Lion, whatever you want to call it. But we were very, very close to it, very close. And, he didn't want to mess around with anybody saying that he was crazy that we saw it.
No estamos locos.
Yeah.
And I would, if somebody told me they saw it, I don't think I would believe him.
What about the
Jaime está hablando.
such thing as coyotes? I mean, we're living in a day when people are...
Está
as I mentioned
hablando de
earlier,
coyotes.
they're afraid of coyotes and wandering in. Have you ever had a coyote track you or follow you or threaten you in any way?
In the snow. Yeah. Again, it was, I was on a surveillance, we had a heavy snowfall that year.
Mucha nieve.
Had what we call a cedar theft going on. It's where they're stealing wood, from the forest. And big money in it. I had a Fish and Wildlife guy out there with me, and he was on one ridge, I was on another one. We had a full moon night. I started walking down slope in through a clear cut to get down to get a closer look because our people were in the area harvesting the wood. And I wanted to get down and get some license numbers off the rig, so I was walking down through about knee-deep snow going down slope. And my radio, I had a portable radio, and it's the Fish and Wildlife guy on the other ridge. He's been watching my backside. And he told me to just get back up to the rig and I could hear the coyotes. They're out there chatting, they're barking back and forth to each other. But what they're doing was they were working around, and he said it looked like they're trying to come in. They're taking me as prey, and he suggests I get back up to the rig. So I went back up. Craig is a black and red Doberman that I got from a friend of mine and he had been abused. They were on a trip down, and that's kind of what he was when he was young, was just kind of abused and abused.
The dog, not your friend.
The dog, yes.
El perro sí, tu amigo
But
no.
the friend was driving back up through Colorado, coming back up to Washington State after making a motorcycle run down in the southern, the arid desert down there somewhere. And they had the back doors of the van open with the bikes in there and all that stuff. And Craig had jumped out of the van, and when he hit the pavement, he gnarled up his head
Ay, me duele la
and his nose, and
cabeza.
then he also broke his ear. And they brought him back into the motorcycle shop there in Lacey, Washington. And when I walked in, he was chained to one of the bikes.
Ay,
And
me duele la
I walked right past
cabeza.
him, reached down and pat him and all that stuff, and walked on in and talked to my friend. And my friend
Dennis no tenía miedo.
asked me how did I get past the dog and all that? Anyways, he's surprised I went past it and got past the dog to get back there where he's at.
He expected the dog to.
He expected the dog to go after me and everything else. I mean, and then about that time I heard the dog just go crazy on somebody out in the front room. So that was kind of what Jeff used as his door ringer when people walk in when the dog would go nuts. So I went back out there and I calmed him down and that stuff, and then I had to take off. So I hopped in the car and I got a call. I went back over to my house and got a call from Jeff about 30 minutes later. Told me to come over and get that dog. I could have him. And I'd offered. So that's a beautiful dog. What do
Es
you
un
want for
perro
him?
bonito.
He told me a price that you're asking way too much money for a dog that you don't even know where it came from. So then I went and went over and picked it up, and that dog was the best dog, most loyal dog I ever had.
Fue el
in my life.
mejor perro.
But he was big, and he did run through a plate glass window or door one night, trying to chase a cat outside. Didn't realize the door was there. And that was on Christmas Eve, and he laid open his head even more, down to the skull and that stuff. So I had to patch that up. And then over the years, he got this really, really, really rugged look in him because of the scar on the nose,
La
the scar on
nariz.
that, the broken ear.
La oreja.
And then he had a tooth that was
El
chipped
diente.
off. One of his canines was chipped off pretty low on the tooth.
Did he love to be out with you?
He loved it. Everywhere I went, he had to go. Yeah. If
Was he good? Good at tracking?
He's great at tracking. He's a great animal to be out there. He couldn't swim with the darn.